The slap echoed across Lenox Avenue like a gunshot. September 14th, 1931, 2:47 p.m., Officer Patrick O'Reilly's hand connected with the face of Margaret Johnson, a 58-year-old woman walking home from Abyssinian Baptist Church. The sound cut through the afternoon air sharp, violent, deliberate. The street stopped. Vendors stopped selling. Musicians stopped playing. Children stopped running. Conversations died mid-sentence. 200 people watched a white cop humiliate a black mother in the middle of Harlem. A woman in a Sunday dress. A woman carrying a Bible. A woman who had done nothing except exist on a sidewalk. Officer O'Reilly considered his personal kingdom, and 200 people watched her son, Bumpy Johnson, do nothing. He didn't swing, didn't shout, didn't even move. He stood 6 feet away from his mother, watching her stumble backward from the force of the blow, watching her hand rise to her face, watching tears fill her eyes, not from pain, but from humiliation, from the knowledge that her son couldn't protect her because the man who struck her wore a badge. Bumpy's face showed nothing, but his eyes did. Witnesses would later say they had never seen eyes like that cold, empty, like staring into a well with no bottom. O'Reilly laughed, a big, booming laugh that echoed off the brownstones. He twirled his nightstick, adjusted his cap, and looked straight at Bumpy. "What are you going to do about it, boy? Call the police." He laughed again. "Oh, wait. I am the police." Then he walked away slow, as casual like a man who owned the world. Officer Patrick O'Reilly had 72 hours left to live. He just didn't know it yet. To understand what happened next, you need to understand who Patrick O'Reilly was in Harlem in 1931. O'Reilly wasn't just any cop. He was the 28th Precinct's Muscle the Enforcer, the man they sent when they wanted someone hurt, not arrested. He'd been on the force 11 years, and in that time he built a reputation that made grown men cross the street. When they saw him coming, O'Reilly collected taxes from black-owned businesses' protection money. You paid, or your shop mysteriously burned down. He shook down numbers, runners, kept half their earnings, and arrested them anyway if they complained. He'd beaten at least a dozen men so badly they ended up at Harlem Hospital, and not one of those beatings led to disciplinary action. Why? Because O'Reilly had friends. The captain of the 28th Precinct was his wife's cousin. The local alderman played poker with him every Thursday, and the Irish mob, the real power in New York's police department in 1931, protected him because O'Reilly was useful. He kept Harlem scared. He kept black criminals in check. He was the boot on the neck, and O'Reilly knew it. He walked through Harlem like a king, nightstick swinging, badge gleaming, certain no one could touch him, not the community, not the law, no one. That Tuesday afternoon, O'Reilly was in a foul mood. He'd lost money betting on a boxing match the night before. His captain had chewed him out for showing up drunk to roll call. And now, here was an elderly, black woman walking too slowly on the sidewalk, blocking his path as he made his rounds. "Move," O'Reilly barked. Margaret Johnson was 58 years old, born in Charleston, South Carolina in 1873, years after the Civil War ended. She'd seen things that would break most people. She'd survived Jim Crow. She'd survived poverty. She'd raised her son, Bumpy, against impossible odds, and she'd learned, like all black people in America had learned, to keep her head down around white authority. So when Officer O'Reilly told her to move, she said, "Yes, sir," and tried to step aside. She wasn't fast enough. That's when his hand came up. That's when the slap echoed across Lenox Avenue. That's when everything changed. Bumpy Johnson was 24 years old in September 1931. He'd already served 2 prison terms, 1 for robbery, 1 for assault. He already had a reputation as someone you didn't cross. He ran policy banks. He protected local businesses from white gangsters trying to muscle in. He was becoming important in Harlem's underworld, but standing on Lenox Avenue, watching a cop slap his mother, Bumpy Johnson wasn't a gangster. He was just a son, helpless, frozen, trapped by the same impossible math that trapped every black person in America. Fight a white cop and die. O'Reilly had a gun. O'Reilly had a badge. O'Reilly had the entire New York Police Department behind him. If Bumpy swung even once, O'Reilly would shoot him dead in the street and call it justified self-defense. Resisting arrest. The newspapers wouldn't even question it. So Bumpy stood, their hands clenched so tight, his knuckles turned white, jaw locked, breathing shallow. He stood there while his mother touched her face. He stood there while O'Reilly laughed. He stood there while 200 people watched him fail to protect a woman who had protected him his entire life. The silence was absolute. Then O'Reilly spoke. That's what I thought. You coloreds are all the same. Tough when you're stealing from each other. But put a real man in front of you. He tapped his badge. And you remember your place. He spit on the sidewalk near Margaret's feet. Tell your boy to stay out of trouble, Mammy. Next time, it won't be just a slap, okay? Then he walked away, whistling. Bumpy Johnson didn't move for a full minute after O'Reilly left. The crowd stayed silent. Nobody knew what to say. You didn't comfort a man after something like that. The humiliation was too deep. Finally, Bumpy walked over to his mother and gently took her arm. Let's go home, Mama. Margaret Johnson looked up at her son, saw the expression on his face, and she knew. She knew what was coming. She'd seen that look before when Bumpy was 14 and a white shopkeeper cheated him. When he was 19 and a prison guard beat him for no reason. When he was 22 and a rival gangster disrespected him. That look meant someone was going to pay. Ellsworth, she said softly, using his real name. Don't do anything foolish. That man has the law on his side. Bumpy didn't respond. He just walked her home in silence. But everyone on Lenox Avenue that day would later say the same thing. Bumpy's silence was more terrifying than any threat he could have made. What happened over the next 72 hours became legend in Harlem. Bumpy didn't act immediately. He didn't let rage make him careless. Instead, he did what he always did. He thought. He planned. He organized. Hours 1 to 12. Bumpy made phone calls not to criminals, but to working people. Porters, waiters, shoeshine boys. People invisible to men like O'Reilly. People who saw everything because nobody looked at them within 6 hours. Bumpy knew O'Reilly's entire routine, where he lived in an apartment on the Upper West Side, where he drank McSorley's ale house, when his shift started 6 a.m., when it ended 2 p.m., and where he went afterward, different every day, but always alone for at least 20 minutes. Hours 12 to 24. Bumpy studied O'Reilly's connections. He mapped out who protected him, the cousin who was a captain, the alderman, the Irish mob ties. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about sending a message that would echo through every precinct in New York. That same day, O'Reilly bragged at the precinct. He told fellow officers how he'd put some colored woman in her place. He laughed about the son who stood there like a coward. He even demonstrated the slap, his hand slicing the air as his buddies chuckled. What O'Reilly didn't notice was the black janitor mopping the floor, listening, remembering, reporting back to Bumpy. Hours 24 to 48. O'Reilly started noticing things. A man reading a newspaper at a bar who wasn't drinking. A car behind him for 3 blocks before turning off. A face he'd seen twice in one day in different parts of town. O'Reilly wasn't stupid. He'd made enemies. He told a few officers to keep an eye out, but they laughed it off. You're paranoid, Pat. Nobody's dumb enough to come after a cop. Hours 48 to 72. O'Reilly's captain called him into the office. Patrick, I'm hearing things. I'm hearing you had an incident with some colored woman up to Nand, that her son is Bumpy Johnson. O'Reilly shrugged. So what? I slapped her. She was blocking the sidewalk. What's Johnson gonna do? Cry about it. The captain looked worried. Patrick, listen to me. Take a few days off. Go to your brother's place in Boston. Let this cool down, O'Reilly laughed. I'm not running from some colored gangster. Let him try something. I'll put a bullet in him and sleep like a baby. That was Wednesday evening, September 16th, 1931. Thursday morning, September 17th, 1931. Officer Patrick O'Reilly left his apartment at 5:47 a.m., walking toward the subway for his 6 a.m. shift. The streets were empty, wrapped in pre-dawn darkness, with only a few street lamps casting yellow pools of light. O'Reilly never made it to the subway. What happened in those 4 blocks? Nobody knows, at least, not exactly. No witnesses, no struggle, no gunshots, no screams. One moment, Officer Patrick O'Reilly was walking down West 85th Street. The next moment, he was gone. His wife reported him missing at noon when he didn't come home. The NYPD launched a massive search. They checked hospitals. They checked morgues. They searched every criminal hideout in Manhattan. Nothing for 72 hours. Officer Patrick O'Reilly simply vanished. Friday morning, September 20th, 1931, 6:47 a.m., exactly 72 hours after O'Reilly disappeared, Officer Thomas Murphy arrived for the morning shift at the 28th Precinct. As he walked up the front steps, he saw something that made him freeze. A man was tied to the iron railing, naked except for his underwear, shivering not from cold, but from terror. Murphy stepped closer, and his stomach dropped. It was Patrick O'Reilly, but not the O'Reilly he knew. His eyes were empty, glassy, staring at nothing. His lips moved, but no sound came out. His body was covered in bruises, not the kind that kill you, but the kind that make you wish you were dead. Pinned to his chest, directly over his heart, was a handwritten note in neat letters. Respect mothers. Murphy rushed to untie him. Pat, what happened? Who did this? O'Reilly slowly turned his head. His mouth opened. I'm sorry. That was all he said. Just those 2 words, over and over. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. They cut him loose, wrapped him in a blanket, tried to get him to talk. Patrick, who did this? Where were you? What happened? O'Reilly stared straight ahead, lips trembling. I'm sorry. They took him to Bellevue Hospital. Doctors examined him. Physically, he was relatively unharmed. Bruises, dehydration, signs of being restrained for a long period. But no broken bones, no permanent injuries. Nothing that explained the look in his eyes. Psychologically, Officer Patrick O'Reilly was destroyed. A police psychiatrist interviewed him for 2 hours, asking questions, trying to piece together what happened during those 72 hours. O'Reilly answered every question the same way. What's your name? I'm sorry. Where were you? I'm sorry. Who did this to you? I'm sorry. Didn't matter what they asked. It didn't matter how they asked. His mind was broken, shattered. Whatever happened during those 72 hours erased everything except those 2 words. The psychiatrist's report read, patient exhibits severe psychological trauma consistent with prolonged exposure to extreme stress. Patient is non-responsive to all questioning. Recommend immediate psychiatric commitment and removal from active duty. Translation: Officer O'Reilly had lost his mind. The NYPD went into a frenzy. They raided Harlem establishments. They dragged in every known criminal for questioning. They offered immunity. They offered money. They offered anything for information. Nothing. Nobody talked. Nobody knew anything, and the few who might have known looked investigators in the eye and said, I don't know what you're talking about. The forensic team examined O'Reilly's body for evidence. They found nothing useful. The bruises suggested restraints rope, maybe chains, but the exact type couldn't be determined. No fingerprints, no fibers, no DNA. It was 1931. Sophisticated forensics didn't exist yet. They analyzed the note. Standard paper, standard pencil. The handwriting didn't match anyone in their records. There was no way to trace it. They interviewed the 200 witnesses from Lenox Avenue, the people who had seen O'Reilly slap Margaret Johnson. Every single one said the same thing. I don't remember seeing anything unusual. The NYPD knew who was responsible. Everyone did. Bumpy Johnson. But they couldn't prove it. Bumpy had an alibi for all 72 hours. He'd been visiting his sick aunt in New Jersey with a dozen witnesses to confirm it. His known associates were all accounted for, all with alibis, all clean. The investigation dragged on for 6 months, then a year. Then it was quietly closed. Officially, unsolved assault and kidnapping. Unofficially, don't ever talk about this again. Officer Patrick O'Reilly never returned to duty. He was medically retired from the NYPD in December 1931. He received a pension. He received psychiatric care. None of it helped. He spent the rest of his life in and out of mental institutions. His wife left him. His friends abandoned him. He became a ghost, technically alive, but not really living, for the next 37 years. Until his death in 1968, Patrick O'Reilly spoke only 2 words. I'm sorry. 2 nurses, to doctors, 2 visitors, to the walls, to himself. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The other cops at the 28th precinct got the message loud and clear. What Bumpy Johnson did to O'Reilly was worse than killing him. Death would have been mercy. Instead, Bumpy had done something so horrific, so psychologically devastating, that O'Reilly's mind couldn't survive it. And the most chilling part, there was no evidence. No body, no crime scene. Just a broken man tied to a railing with a note that read, "Respect mothers." The precinct changed after that. Cops still collected their taxes, still shook down businesses, but they stopped slapping people. They stopped the casual brutality because O'Reilly's empty desk was a daily reminder. You can survive a bullet. You can't survive what Bumpy Johnson does to your mind. In Harlem, they don't tell the story to scare children. They tell it to teach respect. They tell it to remind people that some lines can't be crossed. That mothers are sacred. That badges don't make you invincible. And they tell it to remember Bumpy Johnson, the man who proved that real power isn't about violence. It's about precision. It's about sending a message so clear, so devastating, that it echoes for generations. Officer O'Reilly thought he could slap a black woman in broad daylight and walk away laughing. He was wrong. 72 hours later, he was found naked and broken, apologizing to ghosts for the rest of his life. And Bumpy Johnson went back to protecting Harlem, back to running his operations, back to being king, because that's what kings do. They protect their people. They punish disrespect, and they make sure the lesson is never forgotten. Respect, mothers are. Learn to say, I'm sorry for the rest of your life. If this story hit different, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. We're telling the Bumpy Johnson stories the history books won't touch. The brilliance, the strategy, the code. Drop a comment. What do you think happened during those 72 hours? And would you rather die or end up like O'Reilly? Hit the bell, because next week we're bringing you the story of how Bumpy Johnson walked into Lucky Luciano's office unarmed and walked out as an equal. You don't want to miss it. Harlem didn't need superheroes. They had Bumpy Johnson. And Bumpy Johnson's revenge wasn't murder. It was mercy, the kind that's worse than death.